History is full of second chances, moments when empires long buried under dust suddenly seem within reach again.
And sometimes, all it takes is one alternate decision, one monarch with a different ambition, or one alliance sealed at the perfect moment to change the fate of a continent. So today, let's step into a world where the Roman dream never died, where Italy and Spain rise together as a new Latin powerhouse, and where World War I becomes the stage for the rebirth of an empire lost for nearly 15 centuries.
Ever since the collapse of the Western Roman Empire in 476, the Italian people carried a quiet, unbroken desire to resurrect the glory of their ancestors.
Their closest opportunity arrived during World War I, when both major alliances competed fiercely for Italian loyalty. The Central Powers offered Italy a small collection of Balkan territories in exchange for neutrality, while the Entente tempted them with the far more generous Treaty of London in 1915. Italy accepted the Entente's promises, but their wartime performance was disappointing, and in the end, most of their rewards were withheld. The result was the infamous Vittoria Mutilata, the mutilated victory. Nearly 500,000 Italians died for what amounted to meager territorial gains around Istria, while ethnic Italians in Dalmatia suffered harsh repression under newly formed Yugoslavia. Outrage boiled over, paving the way for the Black Shirts' march on Rome in 1922. They seized power, imposed a totalitarian state, and, under Il Duce, pursued the dream of reviving ancient Rome. Yet after joining the Axis in World War II and gaining only minor conquests, Italy was crushed by the Allies. The monarchy fell, and with it, the centuries-old aspiration of restoring Rome seemed extinguished. But in this alternate timeline, history bends differently. Here, the Roman dream does not fade in 1946. Instead, its greatest chance for survival emerges far earlier, in 1868. In this version of events, the House of Savoy keeps hold of the Spanish throne. Rather than waging war against the United States, Spain chooses diplomacy. Cuba is sold, but Puerto Rico and the Philippines remain Spanish. After the capture of Rome in 1870, Victor Emmanuel II proclaims Latin, not Tuscan Italian, the official language of the unified peninsula, attempting to bind Italy together through a revived ancient identity. Colonial expansion becomes far more successful. Tunisia and Ethiopia fall under Italian control, and after King Umberto I is assassinated in 1900, the 31-year-old Spanish King Filiberto ascends, merging both kingdoms in a personal union. Officially, it is called the Spanish-Italian Monarchy, but the world quickly nicknames it the Latin Monarchy. A devout Catholic, King Filiberto strengthens the monarchy's alliance with the Church. The Pope receives extensive privileges, lands, influence over education, and a restored political presence after decades of isolation within the Vatican. Sweeping agrarian and industrial reforms accelerate development in both kingdoms, dramatically boosting their military strength. As royal authority grows, many liberal movements are crushed. Seeking allies, Filiberto supports Prince George of Crete against Greek influence, ensuring his continued rule and permanently separating the island from Greece. George later marries a Savoy princess, binding Crete firmly to the Latin monarchy. In Portugal, Spain backs young King Manuel II after his father's assassination, crushing the liberal uprising and gaining another vital ally. Libya is conquered in 1911, the first major demonstration of Latin military power. These victories contribute to the Balkan Wars, during which Crete acquires the majority of the Aegean Islands. By now, the Spanish-Italian monarchy stands confidently among the great powers of Europe. Its vast colonial holdings thrive, its naval presence dominates the Mediterranean, and Christianity enjoys renewed prestige under Filiberto's rule. But for the king, this is still not enough. His ultimate ambition remains unchanged, the rebirth of Rome.
Then comes June 28, 1914.
The assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand ignites World War I, offering Filiberto the moment he had long awaited, the chance to carve Rome's place at the top of global power. Both alliances desperately court the Latin monarchy. Austria-Hungary would prefer their neutrality, offering Trentino and sections of Austrian Tyrol, but refusing to surrender Trieste, its primary port, or Dalmatia, which Germany considers essential. Spain, however, is even more valuable than Italy. French troops would be forced to defend the Pyrenees, weakening the Western Front and giving Germany a decisive advantage. Thus, the Central Powers offer Spain, Gibraltar, Morocco, northern Catalonia, and the northern Basque Country. Italy is promised South Tyrol, the Alpine frontier, and, after the war, possible claims to Corsica and Sardinia. France, terrified of a two-front disaster, counters by offering Spain, Cameroon, and Germany's Asian colonies. But Spain insists on Gibraltar, as surrendering the strait would expose France to Latin naval dominance. British refusal kills the deal immediately. Even worse, Britain reduces the Asian offer to only Germany's Pacific Islands. For Italy, the Treaty of London remains unchanged. Rich gains in the Alps, the Balkans, and Anatolia. Though Spain is technically the senior partner of the Union, tension spreads quickly. Spain leans toward the Central Powers, Italy favors the Entente's larger rewards. Spanish politicians worry their king, born and raised in Madrid, is beginning to abandon Spain for Italy. At this precarious moment, Pope Benedict XV urges Filiberto to remain neutral, insisting that Christian nations must not shed each other's blood. His influence fractures the conservative factions, dividing them between loyalty to the church and loyalty to the monarchy. Filiberto personally sympathizes with the Central Powers. He believes France represents the real threats to European civilization. British intelligence takes note, just as they observed similar fissures in Romania and Greece, where monarchs favored the Kaiser while citizens did not. Filiberto meets privately with Pope Benedict XV, pleading with him to stop undermining the war effort. Benedict refuses, but agrees to limit criticism of the king and his dynasty. He also offers Filiberto a seductive vision. If war is unavoidable, reclaim the Holy Land. Return Jerusalem to Christian rule. Do that, and history would rank him alongside Constantine, Charlemagne, and Philip II. Filiberto, intrigued, replies that such a victory would entitle him to the crown of the Roman Empire itself. The Pope answers simply, "The Roman crown sits in Vienna, and the Habsburgs have long been friends of the papacy." The stage is set. Europe stands on the edge of catastrophe. And nearly one-third of Filiberto's subjects are ready to follow him, either into neutrality or into a new Roman destiny. Within the Latin monarchy, loyalties fractured almost perfectly into three parts. Most Spaniards leaned toward the Central Powers, most Italians favored the Entente, and a large middle faction clung to neutrality. Filiberto understood the stakes. Choosing wrong could tear his carefully built union apart and extinguish the Roman dream forever. Spanish leaders were blunt: no war without Gibraltar. To them, Britain and France were the great thieves of their old empire. Diplomatic envoys quietly explored the possibility of claiming the Holy Land as a condition for Latin entry. The Central Powers initially rejected the idea outright. The Ottomans refused to surrender Jerusalem, and Austria-Hungary dismissed any notion of giving the Holy Roman Emperor's crown to Italy. France, however, desperate, offered Spain every majority Christian territory in the Levant, hoping this would ease their demand for Gibraltar. For a moment, it appeared a three-way arrangement between Vienna, Istanbul, and Rome was taking shape. Latin forces even began mobilizing in anticipation of joining the Central Powers.
But then came the twist.
Just as Britain had once offered Cyprus to Greece, knowing King Constantine would reject it and empower the pro-Allied liberals, they tried a similar maneuver here. London applied enormous pressure on Filiberto, hoping to destabilize the Spanish-Italian monarchy.
And then they made an offer they assumed would never be accepted.
Spain would receive Jerusalem, worthless desert to Britain, priceless to Catholic zeal, and, most shockingly,
Britain would return Gibraltar.
Filiberto recognized a bluff, but accepted anyway.
For Spain, the deal was irresistible. For Italy, war against Austria was already popular. Almost overnight, the conflict was transformed into a holy crusade against Germanic arrogance and Ottoman rule.
The Latin monarchy prepared to fight alongside the intent.
Their entry was Austria's nightmare.
Crete immediately declared war on the Ottomans, while King George kept Greece officially neutral. Venizelos remained imprisoned on Crete, yet tens of thousands of Greek volunteers rushed to join the Cretan fight against the Turks. Some factions in Greece even whispered that Prince George might replace their own hesitant monarch. The Megali Idea surged with new life, pushed aggressively by Crete, which hoped to liberate Anatolian lands from Turkish rule. Spain deployed the bulk of its army alongside Italy on the Alpine front. Other contingents fought with France on the Western Front, with Britain in the Middle East, and a few in Africa. Spanish reinforcements finally tipped the balance for Italy along the Isonzo front. The Italian Third Army seized the Carso Plateau and the crucial Aiso bridges before the Austrians could demolish them. They crossed with artillery, captured Gorizia, and advanced deeper as Cadorna's naval landings in Istria split Austria's defenses. Trieste fell, forcing the Austrians to retreat to the cramped Hungarian port of Fiume, which was too small for their fleet. Latin forces attempted to seize Fiume but were repelled. Even so, the Austro-Hungarian navy was forced to relocate to Zara, losing strategic mobility as the Italians blockaded the Adriatic and starved Austrian positions in Alto Adige. Reinforcements enabled the capture of Trento, pushing Austria back over the Drava River. Ljubljana soon fell, leaving Italy in command of the mountain passes until the offensive lost momentum. Overseas, Spain expelled the last Germans from Cameroon and worked alongside Australian forces to conquer German New Guinea. And then came the moment that electrified the Catholic world. Christmas 1917, Spain liberated Jerusalem. The news revived Latin morale. Spanish troops advanced northward, securing much of modern Lebanon with strong support from the Maronites and Melkite Christians. But as the Latins triumphed, Russia collapsed. The Bolsheviks seized power, withdrew from the war, and unleashed a civil conflict. Freed German and Austrian divisions surged toward the Alps, driving the Italians back from Fiume, though they held their mountain lines. Filiberto then pressed for recognition of Latin claims in the Sykes-Picot framework, demanding Armenia on the basis of ancestry. His relative Charles I of Savoy had once held titular claims to Cyprus, Jerusalem, and Armenia. Britain and France dismissed this as absurd and ignored him. The Central Powers now seemed positioned for victory. The Treaty of Brest-Litovsk was devastating. German extremism grew, and rumors spread that Greece might join the Central Powers to seize parts of Serbia. But then America entered the war. Germany was forced to end the conflict quickly. Troops were withdrawn from the Alpine front just as American forces began arriving in Europe. The Latins surged forward again. Ethnic unrest tore Austria-Hungary apart, turning into full collapse. The Ottomans and Bulgarians surrendered to Spain, Britain, France, and Crete.
Eastern Thrace fell under Spanish occupation.
As Austria-Hungary disintegrated, Latin armies marched on Vienna and seized the city. The Habsburg Empire shattered, and the imperial crown was transported to Rome, its ancient symbolic home. Germany spiraled into civil war, the Kaiser abdicated, and the Peace of Versailles was signed. Spain received Cameroon and the German Pacific Islands, but Britain attempted to backtrack on returning Gibraltar. Spain immediately ceded most of its Pacific gains to the United States and Britain just to force London's hand.
Embarrassed, Britain relented and returned Gibraltar to Spain.
Italy gained Trentino and Alto Adige, but far more was at stake. As Austria collapsed, Fiume held a referendum and voted to join Italy. 62% of inhabitants were ethnic Italians, prompting Filiberto to send troops to secure the city. The newborn kingdom of Serbs, Croats, and Slovenes rejected all Italian claims to Dalmatia, sparking a tense standoff. Militia groups formed on both sides. In September 1919, the Italian poet Gabriele D'Annunzio and his volunteers were attacked by a Yugoslav militia, killing 31 Italians. International sympathy swung dramatically toward Italy. Rome demanded an apology and a full investigation. Yugoslavia refused. Filiberto now had his justification for war. Italy armed Slovenes and Croats who sought independence, warning them Serbia would smother their culture and impose orthodoxy. The Italian navy blockaded the Adriatic while the army swept into the Balkans. Yugoslav forces collapsed quickly. As victory grew, Slovenian and Croatian militias openly revolted against Serbian rule. Italy's Albanian puppet state advanced into Kosovo. Rome's original plan was total victory, marching on Belgrade and replicating Romania's conquest of Budapest. Latin troops surged toward the Dalmatian coast. At this point, Britain and France pleaded with Italy to halt its offensive. Rome agreed on one condition: Serbia and Romania must withdraw their troops from Budapest. Central Hungary accepted withdrawal terms, wanting a strong Hungary that could keep Serbia encircled. With Romania pulling out of Budapest, a ceasefire was finally secured, and the Treaty of Varela followed soon after. Italy emerged from the negotiations with nearly the entire Adriatic coastline, far exceeding the promises of the Treaty of London, absorbing former Venetian and Ragusan lands. Slovenia became an independent principality ruled by a native dynast, while Croatia was elevated to a kingdom under Filiberto's youngest son, Aman. Kosovo was transferred to Albania. Serbia retained Montenegro and Bosnia up to Sarajevo. The settlement was relatively mild for Serbia and Croatia, but Czechoslovakia and Romania found themselves firmly checked by Italian power. This cemented the alliance between Hungary and Italy. To the east, the Ottomans were forced to accept an international occupation of the Straits, sweeping Armenian territorial gains and extensive French-Italian zones across Anatolia. Outraged, the Young Turks launched a revolution under Mustafa Kemal, determined to resist the treaty. Their armies initially performed well, but Filiberto was determined to secure permanent Latin dominion in Anatolia and to deliver Constantinople to Crete. So the king deployed over 400,000 Latin troops, overwhelming Turkish positions. To many in the Latin monarchy, Constantinople mattered as much to Christendom as Rome or Jerusalem. It had to be reclaimed. As Latin armies poured into Anatolia, the Turks abandoned their Armenian counteroffensive, allowing Armenia to defend its core regions. Italians worked with local Greek populations, presenting Crete as the liberator of Anatolia, and found enormous success. France, sensing disaster, withdrew from the conflict entirely and began quietly supplying Kemal. Britain soon sought a negotiated peace, convinced the Turks would eventually prevail. Spain and Italy refused, choosing instead to fight to the very end. Their defiance continued until the Turks delivered a crushing defeat to a major Spanish army near Ankara. British public opinion collapsed, and London signed a separate peace recognizing Turkish rule over Constantinople. But the Latins and Crete refused to withdraw. Prince George of Crete was crowned King of Constantinople by the Patriarch, igniting a wave of Hellenic enthusiasm. Greek volunteers poured into the conflict. Meanwhile, Armenia, surrounded and threatened, rejected Soviet demands for military access. War erupted, forcing Yerevan to request help from Filiberto. His brother, Vittorio Emanuele, converted to the Armenian Apostolic Church, married into Armenian nobility, and was crowned their king. In return, the Latin Empire promised full support, sending nearly 100,000 troops into the Caucasus and halting the Bolshevik advance. But the Latin monarchy was overstretched. They did not have the manpower to fight on so many fronts. Turkish forces pushed north, capturing the critical towns of Erzincan and Amasya, threatening supply railways and endangering the front. Believing the war essential for Christian and imperial destiny, Filiberto mobilized another 1.2 million soldiers to crush Turkish resistance. By then, the Soviets had left Armenia entirely but invaded Georgia. The two sides arranged the Peace of Yerevan. Armenia recognized Soviet control of Georgia in exchange for significant expansion along the Kars frontier and into Nagorno-Karabakh. In return, the Soviets stopped arming Turkey. This shift proved decisive. Armenian and Latin armies encircled Turkish positions. The Straits were reinforced. Italy conquered Pontus along the Black Sea. France reached an understanding with Italy. Its original occupation zones would be respected if it ceased supplying Turkey. France also recognized full Spanish sovereignty over Jerusalem. Without foreign support, Turkey collapsed. Ankara fell. The Ottoman puppet ruler, Mehmed VI, was restored to the throne. Crete, now ruling Constantinople, formalized its new title, the Eastern Roman Empire. Armenia secured its gains. Italy took direct control of Antalya as a colonial territory. Latin and French spheres across Anatolia resembled European concessions in China, semi-colonial but heavily influential. France was satisfied to gain prestige and land. Britain, however, watched its influence in the Mediterranean crumble. Anglo-Latin relations deteriorated sharply. By 1924, with the wars concluded, Filiberto decided the moment had come to restore Rome to its ancient dignity. Pope Benedict XV honored his promise and crowned him Emperor Filiberto I of the Roman Empire. Though many modern historians dismiss the Holy Roman Empire as not truly Rome, the Catholic Church had always treated it as the legitimate successor. Through the imperial crown and timeless rituals, Filiberto's new title carried immense weight. After nearly 1,500 years, the Western Roman Empire was reborn. A new imperial flag, combining the city banner of Rome with the Savoy royal standard, reminiscent of the Union Jack, symbolized the union. Officially, Spain and Italy remained separate kingdoms, joined only by Filiberto's imperial dignity.
In practice, this was merely political camouflage. A new unitary Senate was created.
The Spanish and Italian parliaments became bicameral chambers. They met 1 month per year to govern the empire, alternating between Madrid and Rome. In emergencies, sessions were held exclusively in Rome. Victor Emmanuel II's decision in 1870 to revive Latin and the Church's relentless promotion of it finally bore fruit. Latin became the official language of the empire. All imperial decrees were issued in it.
A newly educated patrician class already spoke fluent Latin, while common people still used local dialects.
But Latin literacy grew rapidly among the masses.
Shortly after Filiberto's coronation in Rome, he and Pope Benedict traveled to Constantinople, where King George of Crete was crowned Eastern Roman Emperor by Patriarch Gregory II.
Though the title was officially Anike Romaion Autokrator, most Westerners simply called it the Empire of Constantinople, refusing to acknowledge its Roman identity. Yet economically and militarily, the two Roman empires were now inseparable. Together, they formed the Romano-Socius, or Roman Alliance, a powerful bloc uniting Rome, Portugal, Slovenia, Croatia, Hungary, Constantinople, and Armenia.
Not always perfectly coordinated, but when unified, they formed a continental superpower capable of rivaling the strongest nations on Earth.
Despite prosperity, the coming Great Depression shattered stability across Europe. In Germany, a new extremist movement rose, one that threatened to plunge the world back into war.
And so, the question emerges: could the reborn Roman Empire survive a Second World War? Or would the Axis powers prove too strong, even for Rome revived?